Hello and welcome to the Paranormal TV podcast, the podcast that asks the question, was Yvette really fielding or was she just grassing?
Oh, for God's sake.
We are on episode 6 and I am struggling to find these to make. I need to look up more paranormal because I'd like to make them. I'd like to try and make them at least a little bit funny. I want people to have like a little chuckle and be like, "Oh, that's clever." But I need to look up some new paranormal terms and conditions.
Yeah, something that everybody's using.
Yeah, people on paranormal TV shows whose name I can turn into some kind of pun. Was Yvette really fielding or was she just grassing? I actually Googled before this, what's the opposite of field? So,
yeah, to just get the little thing in.
Yeah, turns out there is no opposite of field. Doesn't exist.
I didn't think
there is no opposite of field in any dictionary.
A field is just its own thing, isn't it? It is a field.
It's a massive grass. So, yeah, there we go. Yvette wasn't just fielding, she was grassing. But who was she grassing on? The poltergeists, more than likely. Or Derek Acora when he got caught out faking on Most Haunted.
Absolutely. Once upon a time.
How are you? How are things?
Good. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. To the listeners, it's going to sound like Chloe and I haven't spoken for a week. But we actually talked 24 hours ago because we are doing 2 days of consecutive recording. It's been a stressful week for me this week because I knew that we were recording on Tuesday, recording on Wednesday, and then Tuesday's episode had to go out on Thursday. And in the meantime, I hadn't watched today's episode, the one that we're talking about tonight. So I was like, how do I go from recording on Wednesday to then have it fully edited to go out on Thursday when in the meantime I need to watch Wednesday's episode and then record on Wednesday before Thursday? I hope that makes sense. But anyway, we're here now. I have watched the episode and I'm happy to talk about it.
Finally. We've got that.
Have you... how recently did you watch this?
Today.
Me too, which is great. So it should be really fresh in both of our minds, unlike the Ghost Adventures episode when I think we watched it in October.
Yes, I can't remember what happened.
So, Chloe, do you want to explain for people what it is we watched today?
Yeah, so we watched an episode of Help My House is Haunted, which was season 4, episode 5, which was called Nightmare in Heath, which is a town in Wales, so that's southwest Wales to actually be precise. Swansea.
Was it Heath or was it Neath? I thought it was Neath.
Neath
with an N.
Neath? Well, I've just wrote Heath, so I probably meant
okay.
Neath.
I didn't know if I'd misread it.
No, I can't remember, but it was somewhere in southwest Wales.
Yeah.
So anyway, this town is known for coal mining history. There's a lot of secret tunnels that are still being discovered today. So the town obviously was very historic, a lot of things going on years ago. And the house that they were looking at was a Victorian terrace. The lady that spoke to us before they all started the programme said that building work triggered the activity, which can happen.
It's a common thing.
When they dig up the grounds, it can happen, which I spoke about in an episode where I said about the house that I lived in. It was a new build, but then there was activity in my house, which I think was related to the ground being dug up. Poltergeist activity, things being thrown, lights on, and she claimed it happened every day and it was basically unlivable and it was unbearable. It was a man and a woman present that she was sort of sure on, and she claimed that they constantly saw a silhouette of a man and a dog, which was touched on actually with the history. Obviously Jane went and spoke to a lady in the town and she gave her clarification that the dog could have been related to the dog of Mortha, which haunted the mines back in many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that was connected to what the lady had spoke about. And she also I'm just putting all the history in there before we start because I think it's a good place to sort of put all this in. The house was located on a road called Winifred Road. Now, they all just thought that was the name of the street, but it's actually named after a lady called Winifred Coons, Tennant, who was a medium who actually lived down that road, and she became
performed several seances as well while she was alive.
Yeah, and she became a medium after her children died, and she claimed she could raise the dead, so she was quite a very strong medium. And they also said that she is known as a spirit to have communicated with mediums from the grave.
Yeah, so, like a reverse medium.
Yeah, so that really is all of the history of the location.
Yeah.
That we need to know.
And thank you, by the way, for all of that information. Something that I didn't write down because it's didn't
very important.
know. It's good to know. It's good to know. But I did write when Jane went to meet with the historian and paranormal expert. I wrote, this is her basically saying, tell me what you think I should be feeling and looking out for in today's investigation.
Yeah.
Which we've discussed before. We talk about all the time. We don't like that.
That's something we agree on.
Preempting. We don't like that. Tell us what we should be looking out for because then our mind will tell us.
Because it started off as just history, and then she was. I mean, to be honest, this woman told her more than she probably needed to know, especially about this dog, because she told her that, and then she said, the lady that we've spoken to said she'd seen a dog. So then that, I suppose, did put the thought in her mind without her asking, isn't it? So. Because even I thought, well, that's the only explanation for that. But where Winifred Road is located, it confused me because though they didn't say that it was built on top of mine shaft. So did they? Have I missed that?
There was a point where the historian said something along the lines of, I don't think I wrote it down, and I wish I had. The reason this place is haunted is because of who it's named after, who used to live here. And then she said, and of course, what the house is built on. And then it cut to a different scene, and then we never heard anything else on that.
That's what I mean. It didn't actually tell us what it was built on.
Yeah.
But I assume it wasn't built on the mines, because else she would have said the house is actually built on a mine shaft. So that did confuse me, I'll be honest.
But also, why even say, oh yeah, it's because of what the house is built on, if you're not going to elaborate?
Unless it was a mixed up edit, and maybe that's what she said and somebody's edited that and it's not. That's the only thing I could think of, because it's a bit
poor
bizarre.
Editing on the editors.
Yeah, because she could have said it's built on a mine shaft, and that's where the conversation of the dog could have come from. But it was very random. So yeah, that still is a question mark on that front, really.
Yeah. And as well, before we properly dive in, I know I said on last week's episode about spiritual mediums and me saying, because this one also has a spiritual medium, but this the thing is with this one as well is that this spiritual medium isn't a guest on the show. This one is one of the presenters. So he's there to stay.
Yeah.
What I've written about this person is there is another medium on this show, like Most Haunted last week. I find this guy slightly more believable only because he hasn't got internet access to be able to research the house before filming. By which I mean, it's not like, obviously Alton Towers is famous, something like 30 East Drive is famous. You can look these things up online. Whereas this lady's house is not famous. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree.
So it's not like he could go online and be like, Sarah's house in Neath, South Wales, what makes it haunted? So he was going in a little bit more blind than if they were going to like a notoriously haunted place. Could he have done research into the road itself potentially? Like, why is this place called Winifred Road? Oh, it's Winifred Coons Tennant, and Oh, also, by the way, her middle name's Margaret. Piece of information that he kept for
Mm-hmm.
himself to sort of blurt out later on in the episode. Potentially. But that's just my 2 pennies worth on that.
Because he doesn't do anything before he goes in, and I wrote that down, that he obviously didn't know anything about who had lived there previously, the owners now, nothing. He knew nothing. He just said he felt angry when he walked in, and he heard the voice of a male. That was it, really.
Yeah, I didn't
However,
hear the voice of a male.
No, well, I've
written
put in
that down.
massive capital letters, why are you playing atmospheric music over evidence?
Yeah, I've also made that note. That is a note that I take forward
Constantly.
into every single other case
Yes.
or episode. I've written it on another piece of evidence.
Yeah.
We'll probably get to it at some point. They go, "Oh, did you hear that?" And then you rewind it to listen back, and it's just violin music, like creepy music playing in the background. I'm like, how am I, as a viewer, supposed to hear what you are suggesting is happening when you are playing ridiculous music over the top of it?
I honestly could not hear most of the things that they were talking about all the way through the episode. There was nothing that I was like, oh yeah, and no, I've put in capital letters, I can't hear the evidence because it was really, really frustrating me, because I was like, my job as the believer in this is to find reasons that I believe, and even myself, I was like, nothing is happening here, because obviously the son was interviewed first, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he said that he'd had a knife thrown at him.
Yeah.
And he did warn them before they started again, so preempting that the kitchen is a dangerous place.
Yeah.
So already it was in their minds that it was a dangerous place. I mean, it was bizarre. And when you say you find a knife on the floor, and you know that, because I know in my home, I'm sure yours is the same, I don't leave knives on the floor. And
no. I can't imagine why anyone would.
No, which is why I understand that. If you have woken up to a knife in the middle of your floor, it would have to leap out of wherever it was and land. So I did think, yes, that is weird. And if there is a spirit that's angry and once you're gone, then they are going to look for weapons, aren't they, to throw at the living.
I did also write when Barry was talking to Josh, and he said, "Are we in danger?" And then Josh replied, "Yeah, especially in the kitchen." And I just put, similar to you, in capital letters, "Stop telling people what they should be expecting to feel."
Yes, I agree.
And then, very clever editing, they cut back to Ian in the kitchen.
Yeah, because, I mean, the first bit with Ian, nothing. I have no notes to talk about that are of any evidence, because there wasn't any. And again, I wrote for the third time, I can't hear cos music.
Yeah.
Because
I think that's going to be. I think that's a theme throughout.
And it's a shame.
It is, because what they were saying was happening was creepy. They were like, "Oh my god, did you hear that? Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" And they were the thing is they said with a few things. Obviously we'll get to them and talk to them in more depth in a minute, but with quite a few things, and throughout the episode they were like, "Did you hear that?" And then they would, in real time, you just wouldn't hear it, because either it wasn't there, or there was music playing over it, or it was just too faint. But then they would play it back on the EVP and obviously enhance the noise, and then you would hear it, and I'm like, I would rather hear it in the real time,
live. Yeah.
Like you said, because I think it sounds creepier when it's quiet and in the background than when you've enhanced the sound so far that actually the static is louder than the actual evidence.
Because then the next bit that happened was the spirit trigger session, and at first I was like, I can't hear anything, but then there was something, finally something, and it all of a sudden just happened. There was the growl, and I could hear that. I rewound that myself, and I heard it on the playback, and I was like, okay. And it didn't sound human. It was just unnerving, really. It was a bit like, because even I thought, is that somebody's stomach rumbling? And I went through all the possibilities, rewinded it back, and I just don't think it was. It was so like creature-esque. That
Do you think?
Yeah, I did.
Do you want me to tell you what I wrote for that?
Stomach rumbling.
No. It sounds like a curtain rail being pulled.
Curtain rail. No.
When you go back, imagine someone pulling a curtain across.
But now you've put
that's
that.
what it sounds. It was like a. It was like a. Oh, there you go. But that's what I thought it sounded like.
That's it. So now I think it sounds like a curtain rail.
I think I've become very good at disassociating what they say I should be hearing, and what I actually hear myself.
I think as well, the next bit that happened was they had the reply of the yes, but then both of the devices went off at the same time. Which,
was this the device? Was this the shadow detector that went off on the landing at the top of the stairs?
Yes, the shadow detector and is it EVP? Because it was the lady who lived in the house. She had the device, didn't she? What's that device called? I cannot remember for the life of me.
Hold on a second. I've jumped way ahead here, because I'm already on the evening fucking.
Oh no! I'm still in the daytime here. The lady who lives in the house is holding the device to say if anything comes near her or around her, and there is the shadow detector in the corner.
Oh, the SLS.
That's it, the SLS.
No, I've sorry, it's not the shadow detector. The shadow detector is much later on. Scratch that. I was talking.
It was his device where he can
it's
see
the
the
SLS.
movement. That's
it's
it,
the structured
SLS.
light sensor camera.
Yeah. And then she's got the device that will go off if there's any activity around her.
And so he said he saw a figure.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then her device went off, and so did that at the same time, and they were all beeping, and that was quite quickly after they'd heard the growl. They asked if this spirit lived or was around, and it says yes, and that's when the devices went off, because then all of a sudden we had a influx of messages come through, which was Demon House, get out, you should leave, Blade, get the fuck away, you won't get rid of me.
Okay.
After that, and it was all in one go, and I thought, wow, okay.
Yes. I've got a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
As Mr. Skeptic. First of all, the SLS camera, the structured light sensor camera, is bullshit. It's largely a debunked piece of equipment that most paranormal investigators just won't use nowadays, because it doesn't do what some people claim it does. Basically, it's an Xbox Kinect camera. Do you remember years ago Xbox brought out the game where it would have the camera, and it would basically trace. Yeah, it would trace your movements, and it would throw your body basically onto the screen. Yeah. And I think there were a couple of circumstances where people, because it would map your body out with a stick figure, and there were one or two occasions where somebody saw a stick figure stood next to them when there was no one there, and then they were like, oh my god, is this the proof of a ghost? And so that's why paranormal investigators started using them. They were then put under a lot of scrutiny, and tests were done, and like I said, most paranormal investigators just will not use them nowadays because of how stupid they are. I spoke to Ash about this, Ash from Pursuit of the Paranormal, who we spoke to a few weeks ago. He is obviously a paranormal enthusiast, a believer in the paranormal, but he's also very good with technology, and he completely debunks the SLS cameras, says that they're absolutely not worth anyone's time. They were created, they were invented by Xbox, by Microsoft, to be sat on like a TV stand, still, like static, and that is how they would pick you up. So if you are holding one and moving it round the room with it, it's going to pick up random things.
Yeah, well,
and it will pick up lines.
Yeah, well, that's what I've always thought, because it could probably pick up a line of light.
Well, what I've written regarding
heat?
No, it doesn't take it off heat. It takes it off body shape.
Right. Okay.
It will look at the shape of a person's body and be like, there's a person, but that doesn't stop it from. For instance, I wrote figure caught on the SLS next to the woman in front of the curtain that is riddled with creases. and this curtain is just like there's just lines everywhere on it. Chances are the camera has just looked at this curtain and gone, God, there's so many lines, and then just drawn a stick figure on those lines. It's not proof of the paranormal in any way, shape, or form.
Unfortunately, it's not, and I don't think any device could pick up a ghost. Really?
Yeah, not like a specific device. No. People obviously claim to have caught photos and stuff and different things
because they're always blurs, aren't they?
But something like that is it's a silly just piece of kit that I think people try and lean into more for novelty than anything.
Yeah, I mean it was interesting what was coming through though. I mean blade.
Well, this was another thing I wanted to unpack because obviously you just mentioned obviously everything from like the SLS camera through to everything that was said. I also then wrote it's hilarious that Ian, the medium, pulled out the name Margaret that after I used it yesterday as an example of cold reading. Hilarious. So I thought, oh, that was nice and coincidental.
He said that after it had spurted out all this stuff, and he went, I know that her middle name is Margaret and she goes by Margaret.
It's just a random older person's name. Cold reading. It's not real. It's not real psychic. It's not. No. It's just.
But I found it bizarre that this spirit is literally abusing them, and then that's his perfect time to tell them that her middle name is Margaret. This woman, the woman who lives in that house, is absolutely terrified.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can see that in her face. And I thought, we've not even acknowledged the fact that this ghost has said that to get the fuck away and he won't get rid of me. And at that point, I thought, well, this is something aggressive then.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it sounded like it said you won't get rid of me?
I heard the of me. I didn't actually hear the start of it because it was more I could sense it was saying something along those lines because of the sort of like the intonations of the way it was coming through. They were trying to say something along those lines. Now, whether that was specifically what it said, they sort of interpreted as well, but that's what I had to do as well because I couldn't actually fully hear that bit.
Because it was at this point in the show I started to get really fucking frustrated. And they hadn't even started like the proper investigation yet. So I wrote, this is exactly what I've written. I thought the session downstairs with the random word device was quite intriguing. It did sound a little bit like it said the name Bill, which was a name that Ian had picked up on earlier. I thought, this is weird. Okay, cool. But then the subtitles threw out the words, you won't get rid of me, alongside an audio that sounds nowhere near anything like that. It literally... The audio that came through was literally, and this is no exaggeration, it literally went, and that was it. And then, but they threw up subtitles that was like, you won't get rid of me. And I was like, it didn't say that.
They went off intonations, which is what I was trying to do, which was literally just the pitch in how you said it, which is what you do when something's inaudible. You think, right, what does that sound like? And then you make an impression.
Yeah, but you can't call that evidence.
No, you can't call that evidence.
Because that's your own interpretation. Yeah. That's them creating a narrative.
But that's why I was saying about he chose that opportunity to then talk to us about it being Margaret's middle name. Now, for me, generally speaking, if I had done this in my own home, and it came through saying all that, I would have then been like, right, let's get rid of it. Let's now say goodbye because it's aggressive. But they just sort of brushed it off. And that's why I do agree with you on that you can't really use that as evidence.
Yeah, you can't because it was a random noise. I would have, if I was in the room doing that investigation, I would have heard that noise and I would have thought nothing more of it. Yeah. I wouldn't have even considered listening back to it because I just know, what if someone else might have gone, what did that sound like? And I would have gone, nothing. It sounded like nothing. There were no words in that. Yeah. So
because then
let's not even use it.
they cut to night then, didn't they? And they did more investigation, and then there was more coming through from Margaret.
Well, when they cut to nighttime, I actually wrote down, my next note was, am I watching Help My House is Haunted or The Gadget Show?
Literally.
Because they were just...
In that room.
What was Barry wearing, by the way? He looked like a
wearing...
bomb disposal expert
like an
or something.
FBI worker. I was like, because I thought, oh my gosh, he's taking precautions. Why? Yeah.
Like, literally,
hilarious.
he's wearing a bulletproof jacket to go and investigate some ghosts.
And that is where the shadow detector went off. That was the bit.
That is where the shadow detector went off. What were your thoughts on this?
So, that I was unsure. See, my issue with this device is, and I'm sure it might work in other circumstances, but with it being a house, you've got all sorts of temperatures going on at all times, and if it was put next to a radiator or somebody moved abruptly, it might have picked up a draft. And even me as a believer felt like there are lots of people up here moving and causing shadows.
Yeah, and that's another one of the things, is there were just so many people
there were
in
too
such
many
a close
people.
proximity.
There were too many people upstairs. So I had to think, right, is there a shadow? And I watched it and I couldn't see any other shadow than the people were there, and there was nothing there that told me that anyone had moved. And I just thought one of them has probably just moved too quick, because unfortunately when you have got, I think, was there like 6 or 7 of them up there with the camera crew?
There was 6. I think I made a note on that. Yeah, 6 of them.
If you've got 6 people in a close space proximity and that landing wasn't very big, then somebody moves, then it is going to pick it up on a shadow detector.
And I can tell you now exactly what happened, and the reason that piece of equipment went off is because the crew member moved. When you watch, and I watched it back, I'm not shitting you, I watched it back 6, 7, 8 times, because a crew member sat on the stairs, maybe 3 or 4 steps down, moved up to the penultimate step, and then it went off. But they were acting as though this was the most groundbreaking piece of paranormal evidence that's ever been caught on camera. And then immediately after that is when Barry said he heard something.
Heard someone say boo.
Well, that was when they went into the bedroom. But straight after the shadow detector,
that was it.
Barry said he heard something that nobody else heard, and I didn't hear, and they didn't replay it or anything. Then they moved into the bedroom, and that's where Ian heard someone say boo, which again nobody heard because of the fucking music.
No.
And then they replayed it back again on the EVP, and that's when you did hear it.
Yeah, but this was where it was probably the best piece of evidence of the whole episode. If you're going to look for evidence, was the pictures moving.
The pictures moving after Jane's coat was pulled, which I just put down to her catching it on the wardrobe handle, because she was stood a centimetre away from the wardrobe.
But you could sit there for ages and say that somebody was on the other side of that wall with a magnet, but no, there's no way a picture could tilt like that. And then when they even went back and watched it when they weren't in the room, and it happened when they were in the room, when they weren't in the room. For me, that is when I went, okay, there is something in this house.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that, but I agree that was... I can't explain the pictures moving above the headboard, but Jesus Christ, the reaction to it all... but Jesus Christ, the reaction to all of this activity was so over the top.
But put yourself in that situation. Would you not... If you, right now, your pictures behind you, if they started tilting and moving on their own, how would you react?
I couldn't say.
I would, if that moved, the picture that's right behind me, I would be gone. I'd be up the road.
Yeah, you make a valid point. I think the point I'm making, the point I was making though was, these guys do this for a living, and they want this kind of thing to happen, and their reactions were less to do with the fact that they were reacting to it. It was more the fact that they were going, oh my God, I can't believe this. And I'm like, but you can, because you are all believers in the paranormal.
Yeah, but I think it's probably because I think they were also struggling to get some sort of hard evidence as well during this investigation, because
I don't think they thought that was the case.
No.
I think they thought everything that was happening was solid and incredible.
which even I have to say, not so much in this one. But
Yeah.
then does it make it more believable if there's less? I don't know, but they sort of played on the wrong things. I think that's the issue. But yeah, so the pictures moved, which was for me a very pinnacle point.
It was compelling.
And then that was sort of the end of that moment, really. They left the room, came back in, and the pictures moved again, and then they cut to them sitting around the table. Oh no, I nearly forgot. The sobbing. I did hear that for the third time it was mentioned, because it was mentioned twice prior in the episode, but the bloody music was on, so I couldn't hear it. But this time you could hear it really clearly from the bathroom, because it came through the camera, didn't it?
Yeah, because at one point Ian said he'd heard a noise, and I wrote, when Ian is sat at the top of the stairs and they hear the noise and they all start shouting, "What's that?" It does just sound like a crow, like just like a bird. But then when they play the audio back on the EVP, you can hear a genuine
Cry.
sobs. Like
you could hear the breath.
A weeping woman.
You could hear the breath, couldn't you? That's what
you could hear. Everything. You could hear the inclination, the intonation.
Because then, what the word is. As soon as that happened, then the TV turned on downstairs, which is something that the lady had spoke about prior. Happens regularly.
Yeah.
But then they sort of.
She said it happened
downstairs.
8 times in one night.
I know, that would really annoy me. If my television turned on that many times in one night, I'd be absolutely livid.
Do you think it was like? Do you think? But for me, I'm just there like, well, then just unplug it. But do you think it's like? She's like, oh well, it's paranormal, so it comes on even without the power lead.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
True. But also, I have to say, and this is an actual comment, our television downstairs does sometimes turn on, and I know it isn't a ghost. It just does. You'll come on, it'll say no signal in the morning. And I know it's just because the TV's just turned on. I don't believe that.
I came home one night. Heather was away. Heather works away a lot. She sometimes works abroad.
Yeah.
I think she was in like LA or something. And I'd been to my mum and dad's one night. Took the dog. It was me and the dog. Went to mum and dad's, and we'd been there since at least kind of 6 p.m. And I arrived home post midnight. And I walked into the house and the TV was on, and I did shit myself to the point where I had convinced myself for a short time that someone was living in our attic. You know how you hear about that sometimes in like true crime.
Oh, yeah.
Someone was living in their attic and then just biding their time kind of thing. But I've been up in the attic, into my own attic a few times, and there's nobody up there, which is good to know. But it did creep me out that the TV was on. I walked in and Naked Attraction was on. I was like, hello. I went through the whole house. All of the doors were locked. No windows were broken, so no one had broken in. I went round with what I guess you could describe as a weapon. It was a microphone stand. So I was like, if anyone jumps out, I'm just going to like twat them. But I found it so weird. I was trying to get to the bottom of it. I was like, did I leave the telly on accidentally before I left? I was like, no, there's no way I would have done that. Yeah. And then I remembered that our TV obviously switches itself off. If it's not been touched in like 2-3 hours,
it can turn itself off.
It comes on. The thing comes on. Are you still watching? Because if not, then we're going to switch off. And I was like, how the fuck is the telly on? And I've never have got to the bottom of that.
Oh, that's weird, isn't it?
But yeah, that is weird. But it's only ever happened once.
Yeah. See, I was just is on like the AV screen, before you actually put your input of what you want to watch.
Oh no, mine was literally playing Naked Attraction. Weird. I walked into the house and heard voices, and I was like,
see, if that had happened to me, I would have thought otherwise. But ours does it regularly. But that was just my point. It just does it regularly. But hers to be fair, was playing something on the television.
But was it though? Because I was literally just about to say that. I was literally just about to say to you, hers was like a no signal screen.
I might have seen it wrong. I thought it was like, you know, that ending credits.
Yeah, if you had to ask me to put money down on if something was playing or if it was like an AV screen,
was it just an AV screen?
I would say it was an AV screen.
Oh, right, okay. I didn't really pay that much attention because there was too much going on at the same time. Because then they went on to talking to Margaret, who had obviously come through and told them they had to close the portal. Now, can I be really honest here?
Go on then.
I shut off. At this point, I was like, is this a remake of Ouija? It was becoming a bit of a Conjuring series at this point, and I even went, I just shut off, and I'll be honest.
Yeah. So you're talking here about Ian doing the automatic writing?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. I completely agree with you. I've written a big paragraph on this, and it's really scathing, but I'm gonna say it anyway because it needs to be said. I put Ian is automatic writing. It's all very weird. I don't know what to make of it, if I'm honest with you, but two things did occur to me. A, even though the house has been super active throughout the night up to this point, the paranormal activity has gone silent while they are doing this experiment. You know, although someone might argue Margaret is talking to them through this, you know, through the automatic writing, but Bill is supposed to still be there. Why isn't he doing something upstairs or trying to get their attention or something?
This is where I thought about what Dr. Kieran O'Keefe said in the episode we looked at last week about how if they're going to do nothing, something major will happen. And neither happened.
Yeah.
There was a slight, and he said something that stuck out for me, which was if they want you to know they're here, they will make it known. So for me, the pictures were moving in the bedroom. That should have been, you're expecting that to build because the energy's building, which is what happens in paranormal circumstance. The energy gets really high stakes, and that's when more things happen. They were right by the kitchen at that point, so I thought, oh, if a knife's going to land on the floor, it's going to be now. Nothing. I switched off. I did carry on with this.
I did carry on with the paragraph.
Yeah.
So obviously I wrote about it going silent, and then I said, and B, they say he writes down, "You could help me," when it clearly says, "You could hear me."
Yes,
when you see what he's written down, it says "you could hear me," but then they're going, "It says you could help me," and I'm like, "You're not reading it properly. It says you could hear me." Now, I wrote this in capital letters. They are creating their own narrative, whether that be consciously or subconsciously. None of this is paranormal. It is all a coincidental fabrication. This is not me saying that it's fake. This is just me saying that they are jumping to massive conclusions from tiny coincidental occurrences and accidentally creating their own fake story.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually don't have anything to comment on that.
I was so frustrated by this point. And also, by this point, before they did the automatic writing, they'd also used a spirit box. I do not trust spirit boxes.
No.
Spirit boxes, this is the paragraph I wrote on that. I don't trust the spirit box. All it does is scan radio frequencies and throws out random words and sounds. Most of the time, it isn't even a complete word, but then it's up to the investigator to interpret what that sound is and create the information themselves. Case in point, when it said end, just as they were ending the spirit box session, it throws out a sound that sounds, and this is verbatim, this is what it sounded like. It went, eh. That was it. That is literally it. But then Jane forces her own narrative by suggesting that it said end, which is prevalent because they are coming to the end of the session. What she's doing is she's doing 2 + 2 = 30. For me, there.
Sean, you're probably going to be really shocked about this, but I don't have anything to argue back on that point.
I mean, I'll
This
be
is a
honest with you.
first for
I'm not
me.
shocked because I watched the episode and it was ridiculous.
This is a first for me. Yeah, I have nothing to comment on that. I have no for and against argument. I'm just gonna remain silent because, yeah, it was. Can I tell you what this vibe of the show gave me? I imagine this is what it would have been like if the people who lived in the Enfield haunting went on a program like this in the 70s.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. I mean, they were very much more with their drama.
And do you know what has just now occurred to me? Is with this woman saying at the start of the show that obviously the TV turns on 8 times a night.
Yeah.
She has daily occurrences of these things happening. Why is this house not as famous as 30 East Drive?
Yeah, I know. But this is the thing, isn't it, with a lot of them? It's without me being presumptuous, people think that their house is going to become famous, and it can be a money making gateway for a lot of people. If like say if my house became incredibly haunted all of a sudden, then yeah, people would pay to come and stay at my house and spend the night and get footage.
There would be, and paranormal investigators would want to come in as well.
Exactly.
And do you know what really annoys me is that this is the first episode we've watched of this show.
I know.
And we're probably gonna end up watching more, and it is probably all of the same ilk. I had really high hopes for this show because lots of people within the sort of paranormal TV community, when I see online and on TikTok and people share things and views and stuff, Help My House is Haunted is a really popular show. They've got their own celebrity spin-off, Celebrity Help My House is Haunted, where they go to celebrities' houses that are supposed to be haunted. But I just have my expectations of the show. If this one episode is anything to go by moving forward, I just have my expectations as a skeptic and as an atheist. I
was expecting
literally
it to be a bit more further along, but then maybe are the early episodes the one we should be looking at? Because is it that they got too comfortable and
they've become too overproduced?
So maybe the first 2 seasons are where we need to go.
I completely understand where you're coming from, and in future I think we'll go with a season 1 episode.
Yes.
If and when we come back to Help My House is Haunted, that's a good idea.
Because that's when they want to get the audience, so they're going to be the best episodes, aren't they? So we'll go to that next time we do it.
Yeah. Because then as well, sorry, that was a really off kilter discussion we had there. It's at one point, it's after the automatic writing. They've come to the conclusion now that a portal has been opened. All these creatures, these dogs, these things, these bad spirits have come into the house through a portal. And he wrote on the piece of paper, he wrote the word up. And from that, from that one singular word, those 2 letters written on that piece of paper, the information they got was, we have to go to the attic.
Yes.
We have to go to the attic. So Barry goes up to the attic, and while he's on his way up to the attic, he hears a weird noise. And I made a point of writing down, Barry says that he hears a weird noise when he's climbing up creaky ladders.
Yes, exactly. Because that noise was a creak. It was him.
It was something like a creak. Yeah. I'm sure he would try and say it was, because at one point they heard a noise and they said it sounded like an imp. Who, Chloe, the fuck knows what an imp sounds like?
I wrote let me find it. I put imp. That was very judgmental. That's what I put.
Who knows what an imp sounds like? Chloe, dinosaurs existed. We know that for a fact. We do not know what they sounded like, though. We can hazard a guess.
When but
who knows what an imp sounds like?
When they were talking about this imp, all I kept visioning was Sirius Black in the Prisoner of Azkaban, just turning into a dog. Every time they said it, I was like, oh, that's all I kept thinking about. And I thought, well, yeah, I don't know what an imp sounds like. If anybody does, please
I don't
let
know.
us know.
My idea of an imp, if we're going off Harry Potter references, I assumed an imp would look maybe not too dissimilar to a house elf.
Yes, something creature-esque,
Yeah.
not a dog. And I don't know.
But the way he said it with so much confidence,
It's
and
an imp.
but then so they bless the house. They
Yeah.
say they're closing the portal.
Yeah.
And I've written this paragraph on this. This is just a very personal thing, and I'm putting this out here. I am an atheist, so it really irks me when they start bringing really religious stuff into programs like this.
Yeah.
I do think you can be non-religious and still be into the paranormal, or sort of assume that energy exists past death and still believe in ghosts. I do think you can be an atheist and believe in ghosts. I don't think you have to be religious to believe in ghosts. But for me, when they start making these ghost programs religious, that annoys me. I went on to say, demons do not exist. Holy water is doing nothing to help this woman rid herself of the experiences she is having. She needs a psychiatrist and a parapsychologist to explain that everything she's dealing with is psychological. And then, once she understands that, her life will go back to normal. And she'll understand that you live in a terrace house. You are semi-detached. There are people that live next door. You're going to hear things because there is a house attached to your house. So, anytime your neighbors move, it will probably create a noise that you will be able to hear. Yeah. And if your brain can at least accept that, actually, it's probably not a ghost, then you'll be able to get over that initial...
I mean, in this circumstance,
feeling.
I do agree with you, but I don't agree with you in others, because for this, I agree. I do believe it's all in her head and it probably isn't happening. But I do believe that there are places out there, houses, buildings that are haunted, and some do have demonic presence. So, but that I say, that's where our opinions differ.
Like for me, the idea that ghosts could exist in energy form, I've never seen the proof for it, but it's like a possibility. But also for me, I can't submit to the idea of demons, the devil, God, all these little mythological creatures like imps, and like fallen angels and things like that. That's not for me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Before we do conclude, can I just say my very, very final note, which I think you might have already touched on earlier on. I put, bringing Sarah back in to show what they had found is horribly cruel. It's literally like they're going, look, your house is haunted. Here's the proof.
Yeah.
Good luck with your life.
No need for that.
And then she's just left behind, petrified in her own
Yeah, but
home.
that's it. They're feeding her anxieties as well by doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just bless the house and go, bye, sorted.
Yeah,
done.
Literally.
Because they could have done that, and that would have been nice of her.
They could have gone, look, we did find some stuff, but what we also found out was that we could get rid of it, and that's exactly what we've done for you.
Yeah. So have a nice life.
There you
Bye-bye.
go. Yeah, enjoy your house. So
ghost free.
Yeah. Before we get down to the number one question, I'll ask you what for you is the best piece of evidence?
The pictures moving, because it actually to me was the only piece of evidence.
100%. I've written the picture moving. That was weird, and I can't explain it. The only other thing that came even close was the crying.
Yeah,
the
sobbing.
Voice, the sobbing. But even then, and I know this is a stretch even for a skeptic, but could it possibly be that a device can accidentally, through some kind of airwaves, connect even if just very briefly, to someone's phone, and there happens to be a woman crying on the phone? I don't know.
Well, these are things that we'll never know.
Yeah. That's me jumping to
Yeah.
conclusions, but from a
But
skeptic
yeah,
standpoint.
you're right.
Talking about shit that I don't know about. What would you say is the worst piece of evidence?
Well, it's not just one, but I'm gonna have to condense it. I'm gonna say when he was writing with his eyes covered, the shadow detector. There was a lot. I'm gonna just say the majority.
I love that as we're moving forward in this podcast, me and you are becoming so much more in sync.
Yeah.
Because I've written literally after the pictures moving, the worst piece of evidence was literally everything else.
I can't.
But if I had to hone it into one piece of particular evidence, I would have to say it's the shadow detector going off on the landing. The crew member moving on the stairs is clearly the reason why that piece of equipment goes off, but they treated it on the show as if it was one of the most groundbreaking captures in paranormal history.
And that was a red flag for me. That was a red flag.
I remember you saying that was one of the turning points for you.
Honestly, yeah. I'm disappointed and I'm very sad.
You look it, to be fair. You look really deflated.
My verdict.
Well, did you have a scariest moment?
No.
Me neither. Literally me neither.
I wasn't, and that was a moment for me because I wasn't scared. Like there are some where I watch and I think this is ridiculous, but they scare me, and I'm like, I'm a bit freaked out here. And we've even talked about the ones where you've not believed, but it has freaked you out, like it scared you.
Oh my god, yeah. Look at episode 2.
I know, you know what I mean.
Look at Destination Fear. The scream. Oh my god, I nearly cried.
They scare you,
but with this episode, I was just so frustrated.
And I'm thinking, if I'm not being scared through a scream, then you surely aren't.
Yeah. So, Chloe, do you think Sarah's house is haunted?
I don't. Honestly, and I'm deflated because I never want to say no. I always want to be open to the possibility because that is the way who I am. But honest to God, I just found this ridiculous. I actually found it, if in some ways, a little bit insulting to other people that are really serious about investigating this, because I just feel like, one, they played on her emotions a lot. I think that is something that I have to highlight. I think they knew that she would be frightened, and yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
it's not.
And then
haunted.
you've got shows like Destination Fear, doing God's work, coming out and just having literally 4 people, 4 cameras, in a massive, state penitentiary.
Yeah.
Spending time alone, and then capturing literally what I would call groundbreaking. Well,
it's
evidence.
Raw. That's
evidence enough for me as a skeptic to be able to say, yes, I think it's paranormal, because there was no bad evidence in that show.
The thing is with that program is there is a bit of music, but there is no music while they're investigating. There's no music edited in. It is just raw footage, and that is what you need when it comes to these things about getting evidence. Don't play me spooky violin music over a piece of evidence that you want me to listen to, because it was really frustrating.
A piece of audio evidence, especially.
It was frustrating. That is the word I would use. I'm frustrated after watching.
That's what I wrote when I wrote scariest moment. I put there wasn't one. I was just frustrated throughout. It was such a frustrating watch.
I want to watch a season 1 episode because I want to give it a chance, because at the minute I've got this impression that they're just.
You think that they've kind of settled in to what they want to be, like
and potentially the later episodes might be better, because you know how something does, like you see it with TV programs of any stretch. Season 1 or 2 are always amazing, then it dips, and then the finale is always amazing, which is probably what's happened there.
Yeah, it could very well just be that this was a one-off bad episode.
But we plucked out a hat,
that we just happened to have, by coincidence, chosen to watch for the first time. Just to confirm, I also said no, I don't think Sarah's house is haunted. I'm sure you saw that coming.
Yep, sure.
For the exact same reason as I've already stated, none of this is paranormal. It is all coincidental fabrication. This is not me saying that it's fake. This is just me saying that they are jumping to massive conclusions from tiny and coincidental occurrences and accidentally creating their own fake story.
Yeah.
I found Jane especially to really be forcing stories out of nothing.
Yeah, she created her
Literally
own narrative
nothing.
a lot.
She had something to say about everything. Something would happen, and it, for me, I'd be like, huh, yeah, okay, fair enough. But then she'd go, ooh, let's blow this up out of proportion.
And
do you know
it
what I
really
mean?
Random. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
And it made no sense.
Yeah, I just think this episode was poor. But yeah, that's that for this week.
Yeah.
That's the episode.
And I will just conclude finally with, this is our own opinions, no
yes.
ill will or anything to the producers
Absolutely.
or Ian, Barry, or Jane. I'm sure they're all very lovely people and they're all really hardworking and passionate about the paranormal. This is just, our opinions on this one episode. So even though it might sound like we've gone in really two-footed on everyone.
Oh no. I mean, it's a very successful program, and you're obviously doing something right because you've got loads of seasons. Yeah. It's just unfortunate that we clearly picked the one that they might even agree and say, yeah, we don't think that's great either.
Yeah, that was a poor episode kind of thing. Maybe
because not all of them are perfect. I mean,
yeah,
you could talk to any producers of the paranormal investigation programs, and they'll probably say, yeah, we're not keen on season 3. Or, that wasn't a great episode, because they know themselves sometimes when they're plucking out of thin air. Well, yeah, it's just our opinion.
Or maybe, I'm just trying to think now. I'm thinking of a couple of things. Maybe we're getting to a point now where we've done quite a few episodes. And I know we've had quite a few episodes, like episode 1, Paranormal Lockdown at 30 East Drive. That for me was really frustrating. Bigfoot, the Bigfoot episode was frustrating just because there was no evidence. But like actively no evidence. They didn't showcase anything. It wasn't like it was bad evidence. There was just no evidence. There have been, a couple of them, but for the most part, I think we've been really spoiled with the shows we've watched.
Yeah,
we watched,
for sure.
Obviously, most Haunted at Alton Towers. That was a good watch. Destination Fear was unbelievable. I'm really excited actually to get round to watching a Project Fear episode.
Yes,
which is the new one that they do, which is on YouTube. Since they were literally tragically cancelled from TV. That genuinely broke my heart when that happened. But maybe we've been spoilt with stuff like that. Like I said, to the point where even I gave it a yes for Destination Fear. But also, it's the first episode that was based in a house. Just a house. So maybe that has played into it as well. Maybe we like to subconsciously, not obviously explicitly, but like maybe we like watching things in more famous or bigger locations.
I think the location doesn't matter. It will be scary or it won't be, because somebody could live in a terraced house and it could be incredibly haunted and a horrible place. There could be scream. You know what I mean? You'll hear things like that. I think this one was just not the best.
That's fair to say. But again, just our opinion.
Yes.
No ill will to anyone. Okay. I do have to say, because this was quite a quick turnaround in recording this week, I unfortunately didn't have a video to put on TikTok to get any shout outs. So we are going shout outless this week. We're going shout outless this week, unfortunately, but I'll get a couple of videos made and put out for the next time that we record. Chloe, do you want to take us out?
I do. Now, tonight I think has been an eye-opener, because it's the first night that I have not believed a place was haunted, but just want to say that Margaret the ghost medium wasn't great at her job. She did keep getting spirit messages, but they were all just complaints about the afterlife Wi-Fi. So, thank you very much for joining us, and we shall see you next week.
What even was that?
either.